Hi, I'm Corbin Shanklin of the Illuminerdi, speaking today with Russell Owen, the writer-director of the new horror movie Shepherd. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing super well. To get things started, could you tell us a little bit about the plot and kind of introduce viewers to Shepherd?
Yeah, Shepherd is a story about one man's spiral into madness after he takes a job as a shepherd on a remote island alone, just him and his sheepdog, not long after his wife passes away. So he's running away from his grief, but he's also running away from guilt, and you're not sure at the beginning what exactly he's guilty of. And that slowly unravels itself through his supernatural experiences on the island.
Now, Shepherd features a tight, small cast of very unique characters. What was your casting process like?
Even though it was a small cast, I really wanted to go for really well-seasoned, professional, amazing actors because we really had to create a strong vibe for each character and a strong identity based on sometimes on real people, on experiences, and they had to make that their own and work with the costume designers and the makeup and to get the feel. And the casting process was, even though it's just four people, was tough. But Gemma Sykes, who's an amazing casting director in the UK, she immediately came back with that list, and they were all on top of it. Originally, Kate Dickie's character, the fisherman, was going to be a fisherman, and we were always stuck on that being a little bit too piratey, or so how can we mix it up, how can we change it, and we changed the gender, and Kate Dickie's name came to the top, and it really worked, and it really helped embody the story and the psychology which Eric is struggling with in the process. And Tom Hughes has been an emerging actor, one of the top emerging actors in the UK for a long time, and he's well sought after. So I wasn't sure if I'd get him, but he's one of those actors, you know, 1-2 takes, and he's done it and he's nailed it, because he really does absorb every word you say to him and then just acts it out, and that's a gift.
That's fascinating. Now, you mentioned the costume design. Could you tell me more about the ghostly apparition that Eric Black sees throughout the film? I'd love to know more about your inspiration for the design and how you brought that creature to life in the movie.
So that was based on shipwreckers. So that there's a lot of history, particularly where I grew up in Wales, and then further south in Cornwall, and of course on the west coast of Scotland, of people putting out the lights of lighthouses or posts in the past so that ship captains couldn't see the coastline, and then they would draw ships in with a lantern on another side so that they would wreck the ship and they'd kill the crew, and they would plunder the rest of the whatever's on the ship as it washes up into the shore. And that was quite a common practice. So it started off as that, and so that character in the film is a metaphor for something. You know, Eric sees one thing, and then it develops into that from his dreams, and then it comes into his reality. For something that's it's his guilt, it's bugging him in his life, he's done something, and so that's essentially where the costume idea came from, and then that story developed into it manifesting as his actual guilty conscience. So yeah, and we that costume was made out of all sorts of things: seaweed, fishing nets. It was rigged up with water that came out. It was it was great. It was a really good costume, but we had to throw it away in the end because it got moldy in a bag.
I'm so sorry to hear that. Honestly, my jaw dropped to the floor the first time I saw it, and every time after that, it was one of my favorite elements of the film. Yeah. Now, talking about the location, I heard that you shot the film in Scotland and Wales, in that area. What was it like shooting at those locations?
A lot of the film was filmed on the Isle of Mull, which is far west. It's in the Hebrides, and it's the far west of the Isle of Mull. So it's a really, really remote location. No one had really, apart from a couple of wildlife documentaries, no one had filmed in that part of the Isle of Mull before because it's so difficult to get to, the small roads. And but it's one of the most beautiful parts of the world. I mean, it is stunning, but in a very bleak and eerie way. It was a huge challenge. It's the middle of winter. You got wind blowing off the Atlantic. And we had to build the cottage set there. We had to build the lighthouse, the base of the lighthouse, and then we had to, put models up and all sorts of things. It was a real challenge, but because it was so important, the island is a character in the film. It's not just a location. It's what it illustrates what's going on in Eric's mind. It was so important, and I'd gone up and down. There's lots of beautiful landscapes in Britain, but a lot of them also get used in a lot of films. From James Bond, it's like China or Russia, or it's in a Marvel film, or it's in a Christopher Nolan film or something. Always as some sort of I was like, I don't want to use anywhere that people go, oh, they filmed that there. But when I found that island with the three peaks, Ben Moore Mountain, and this really Icelandic volcanic, because it goes off to Iceland, and so it turns into this volcanic bizarre landscape. It just had a very dreamy, nightmarish vibe, and that was it. We worked really hard to be able to get everything out there and shoot.
And speaking to how the island is a character in the film, how is the body of water surrounding it a part of that? And furthermore, what was it like filming the intense underwater sequences in the movie?
I mean, having it being an island it's a huge island. So it wasn't. It's not like I say island. It's like a mini Britain. It's massive, but it was. I mean, I love the sea and I love water. Although the most recently, I lost a friend to the sea in Wales who was a fisherman.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thank you. But there were so many parallels with his loss and the film. It kind of like freaked me out a little bit. And we always used to think, growing up as kids, it was terrifying. I mean, particularly, not so much in Wales, but in Scotland, they have these huge, almost like Norwegian sort of forwards, the locks that go in. And they're very, very deep, and they're old glacial lock, and they're very, very dark, very clear, very, very clean water. And crisp, and it was always a big part of the film because it's supposed to symbolize like a moat on a castle. You can't, you might be able to get, you won't be able to get in, and you won't be able to get out. And so that scene at the end where he has to try and swim off and struggles was really important. And so we came back a year later to a studio outside London to film the underwater scenes. And try and recreate that inky dark black of a Scottish loch. I filmed underwater a couple of times for commercials and things. So I was quite clear on the story, was exactly what I wanted to do, and because we only had a day. The biggest challenge was obviously one of the characters. It has to drag one of the characters down under the water, and once you start swimming down to a certain depth, your ears are like and you're the pressure is quite so. For that actor, it was complete hats off, an incredible job. But I know a guy was there. She thoroughly enjoyed her time in the underwater tank. Tom was great, but he's not a huge fan of all the underwater, because you have to get up all the time and breathe, and no one really wants the apparatus. But some of his stuff was really tricky, that we had to get a double in to do the deeper stuff, because we didn't really want to drown our stuff.
Of course not.
So, that'd be horrible.
Oh, that's
not to drown anyone, but somebody more experienced in deep water. Because I didn't go in. I was sitting on a cozy sofa with a screen.
That's very interesting. Now, could you talk to me about the significance of Dante's Inferno in relation to Shepherd?
So Dante's Inferno, I love the circles of hell, and Shepherd, for me, the story represents several circles of hell and the purgatory. And you know, this is a guy who's suffering from grief. He does a suicide attempt at the beginning, so we are left to guess, you know, where is he? Where is his mental state at? And for me, it was always purgatory, and Dante's Inferno is something I studied at uni, was a big part of you know, that inspiration. And I remember how after writing the story, I literally flicked through and I put my finger on a quote, which is the quote at the beginning of the film, and it embodied the entire film so perfectly. It freaked me out. I threw the book across the room. I'm like, and I had to try and find the quote again. I was like, okay, it's got to go in the film. Because yeah, I mean, it's, you know, we all have our own sort of personal hell, and so it was almost tricky to try and make the film without referencing that, because, you know, it's sad that his writings have an influence on lots of storytelling and films and books over the, you know, centuries. So yeah, I mean, it's essentially the element of purgatory and hell.
Fascinating. Now, on a lighter note, what was it like working with the animals in the film, such as Baxter, the dog, and the sheep?
I love working with animals, and they always say don't work with kids or animals on film or special effect. And I've done all three at the same time. I have a lot of patience for kids and animals on film. We always make sure we schedule enough time, and it was great. I mean, Shuggy was actually a girl who plays Baxter, and had a great animal handler, Joyce. She had a very, very quiet, creepy sort of demeanor about her, or just sort of like disturbed in it. So she reflects Eric's state of mind. So she wasn't like some over the top happy jumping around bouncy dog. She was always sort of thinking, and so she was great, and didn't have to do that many takes with her to get the performance that we needed. And she was always and the sheep are very different. But the second you've got food, they'll do anything, and the second you bring a dog, they'll freeze, and they'll do. So there's a few tricks of the trade as shared by real life shepherds on the Isle of Mull, who came over and did all the sheep scenes. But yeah, I mean, I love working with animals, so I've done it a few times before. So I always prep a little bit differently when I know we're going to shoot an animal. So let's make sure the camera's here and we do it this way. But so you can't rely on an animal to do exactly what you want. But if you can get something close, then you know you're on a good track. I mean, I always watch Harry Potter with all them bloody owls, and not the CGI ones, but and just go, okay, those guys nailed it. They were good. And the squirrels in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, that's someone up there.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Now, my final question for you: could a sequel or a spin-off or another story in the world of Shepherd ever come to fruition?
Well, I wrote a lot of different paths that, as an audience, if you leave, you might have a theory that he died, or a theory that it's witchcraft, or a theory that he's crazy, and so on and so forth. And those stories have set the basis for another script I set in the same universe, the same dimension, if you like, but it isn't directly related to it, but there is a reference to it. I love the idea that, you know, you watch something like Shepherd and you know that it's not quite the real world. There's a heightened reality to it. That cottage isn't quite right, and that lighthouse isn't quite right, and his costume isn't quite right, and there's always something off. It's another dimension, a parallel dimension, and which is something I built out of old pagan stories and ghost stories and stuff. So yeah, there's something else I've set up in that, and I'm in talks hopefully to make it next year. So fingers crossed. We'll see how Shepherd does, but yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for speaking with me today. It's been a wonderful conversation with you. That's Russell Owen, the writer and director of Shepherd. Shepherd will be in theaters on May 6th, and it'll be available on demand and digitally on May 10th. So thank you so much, and I wish you the best of success.